Hi, everybody. It's Sloan Rhodes here. Welcome to the podcast. Today I have a very special guest. I have my daughter, April Rhodes, here in the studio to help with this podcast because April and I wanted to talk a little bit about the parent-child relationship and honoring each other in the way that we are as humans, as opposed to just looking at each other in this sort of archetypal role as mother or daughter or, child and parent. So I thought it'd be really interesting and really fun to have April here. So welcome, April.
Thank you. Hi, Mom.
Hi, honey. So I kind of wanted to start today, April, just talking about, from your perspective, when things began to shift for you from looking at me solely as your mother and began to see me more as a person. Do you remember if there was like a certain age that happened, or?
I feel like...
Or has it happened?
No, you're just plain old mom, No, I'm kidding.
Let me just say that April is 20 years old, and she is my middle daughter, and she's a student at Seattle University.
Yeah, so I'm trying to think. I feel like it was kind of a gradual transition, but I don't know if it was like when we moved here, or I felt like there was definitely a time, like middle school, high school era.
Yes.
I remember the whole puberty era. And, I feel like at that point you were no longer like my idol, as you had always been. You were the enemy at a certain point, which is really funny. And I don't know, I feel like you were no longer like, mom, and you're just, mom. And
I represented an obstacle to your freedom.
Yes.
Well, I think what's really funny, just from my perspective, April, is when we talk about this, it's and remembering, the arc of your life up to this point, and the arc of my life as well, that for me, in order to have a very strong and dynamic relationship with you, and of course your sisters as well, but more specifically you in this moment, was to sort of honor who you were in that moment, as opposed to trying to bring in who you were like a month ago or a year ago, because, there's so much shifting and growing that's occurring, not only as a parent, but especially for a young child. And so, I think because we have kind of laid the groundwork up until puberty of sort of each other kind of honoring one another, even though it wasn't like an intention, like I'm going to honor my child. It wasn't anything so sort of, like that. It was just more a deep love and honoring of and recognition, really, that you were this little soul, in this little body, and so I think because we already had that kind of dynamic, that by the time it hit puberty, you hit puberty, I was I'm not saying it wasn't kind of shocking sometimes at how how much you grew and changed in a very short period of time, but I think that because we had that kind of bond already, it made it a little easier, at least from my perspective. How about from yours?
No, yeah. I mean, yeah, I don't think there was ever this, like, very conscious honoring, but I think that, like, I feel like on everything, we always had, like, discussions, and I remember, please come into my room, April, we need to talk, and, like, the horror, but, like, no, I think there was always, like, a very, like, human to human, like, give and take conversation that we would have, or, like, you would try to understand where I was coming from, and I would try to understand where you were coming from, or maybe not try so hard, but I would hear you out.
Yes.
Meaning I would sit there and glare at you. But yeah, I feel like there was always like, I don't know, there was always like a very intentional, well, I don't know how intentional, but like we always did have like discussions, and we always like tried to work through it together, and like evolve together so that we were kind of on the same page going forward.
Yeah, I think that's important. I mean, everyone's going to have their own relationship with their children, of course, but I do think it makes it a little smoother if you can kind of look at each other from a little bit of a spiritual dimension or perspective, as opposed to just the mother-child or the father-child or the parent-child or whatever, because, of course, that's going to be first and foremost. And when your children are little, of course, your entire focus is on keeping them safe and secure. But as it kind of grows, part of the spiritual lesson really is learning to let go, learning to, realize that, there's very little that you can do to control them at a certain level, and you have to give into the trust. And I think for me, that was really, and for many parents, it's one of the most difficult aspects, like when to let go and when to hold tight. And, but I think just in terms of spirituality, it's an amazing lesson in life, because really we don't actually have control over anything. And when we try to control our children in a way that is not honoring of who they are as dynamic, growing, evolving entities, it makes things very, very tough. And I think it's really cool when we can kind of get to this place that you and I are at now, April, where we can continue to have conversations about the growth that we're both experiencing, because this is kind of a lot of rapid growth for you as a 20-year-old, and for me as well, with all my children now gone from the home. And it's really nice to know that we can still have these conversations, even though at times they can be awkward or uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But just in terms of your sense of spirituality in connection to like the parent-child relationship, did you ever have much sort of consciousness around that, or is it always like, more kind of grounded in the fact that parent-child was the dynamic?
No, I don't know. I feel like it's hard to like see outside of your roles, but at the same time, I don't know. I feel like you and I always had like a very like obvious connection. I don't know if it's because I'm like you personality-wise, or like because I look like you or what, but like I feel like you were never just my mom. Like you were always like a friend in a weird way too. Mm-hmm. And like that, it was never like, you're never like the cool mom who like acted younger, it was never like that. No
what?
offense. No. You're cool. It's fine. No.
Okay. Dash my hopes.
No, but you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, no, I know.
I feel like we could always like joke around, and we always like had a good time together, and we could step outside of those roles at time and just like, I don't know, see each other as people. And
yeah, I really do think that as doing this podcast on kind of like the parent-child relationship and spirituality, I think one of the best ways to honor and love your child is to have a sense of humor about the role itself, just that role of being a parent or the role of being a child, and how when you can kind of look at it from their perspective, me as a parent looking at it as a child perspective, mm-hmm. It really does help open up the communication, because I think one of the biggest problems with parenting children is that, they just don't, once the communication shuts down and they don't respect you or you don't respect them, or no one's telling each other anything, it's just, it gets very sticky. But one of the best ways to kind of break that open is to be able to laugh at yourself and to laugh at your child, which I know I did frequently, because I found parenting being just so hilariously funny, because you guys always made me laugh so hard unintentionally.
Yeah. No, I feel like there was many a time where like, especially during my like, crazy like puberty age, where I was just mad all the time. I feel like there were many times where we would like have discussions and like simultaneously I'd be like crying and laughing, and like just the absurdity I think of it all is really funny.
Yeah.
And kind of like makes it easier when you both can just take a second and like laugh at how stupid your problems are together, and work through it.
Yeah, I like that word absurdity, because it can be very absurd, the things that you get so triggered by as a parent or as a daughter in your case,
Yeah, I remember like there were like the littlest things would like make me so upset at the time, and it was always like, you wouldn't let me stay at a friend's house like an hour longer or something, and to me that was like the end of the world, and you didn't trust me, and and it was this whole thing. But like, I just think, I don't know. I think at the end of the day, we'd both kind of be like, okay, this is a little...
Yeah, it's not... Why are we fighting?
Why are we fighting? Because it would get very, like, upsetting and intense.
Yeah. I think it's really fun to kind of extrapolate that whole thing and pull it out into the greater spiritual perspective, because, whenever we are in a place of, like, laughter or humor, it's just another word for love and openness and surrender, and from a spiritual perspective, that's what we're always trying to do, is try to be more open and allowing and surrender to the divine, and to have it show up so in your face in the parent-child relationship, in mm-hmm. the way that you just want to maintain that. As a parent, you want to maintain that sense of control, because there's this false illusion that you're in control of your child, but especially during puberty, you realize that is not true. But the more that you can kind of, again, from the spiritual perspective, kind of have that sense of love and honoring. That's just other words for openness, really. But but it does create elasticity and the ability to shift and create new understandings of one another. Is the humor, I think.
I think so too.
Yeah.
I feel it just kind of breaks that tension.
Yeah. And you realize sometimes, you get very entrenched in the role of parent or the role of I'm the rebellious child or whatever it might be in the moment. But I also think that just in terms of recognizing, too, the transformation that occurs, the transformational arc, it really is a time of great spiritual growth as well, because, when the parent-child is all about the all-knowing one, right? The omnipotent, God kind of thing. And then the child breaks away and becomes its own sort of master of its universe kind of thing. And then ultimately you come back together in this place of oneness again.
Yeah.
Hopefully eventually, but it's kind of it's interesting.
It is. And it's a fun day, I think, as a child too, to like realize that your parent is not all-knowing. Your parent is not omnipotent. Like, I feel like it's a fun day when you can look at your parent and be like, oh, you're flawed too. Like we can connect on that level.
Yeah, exactly. I tell you, it's a relief as a parent too to not have to try to pretend anymore.
You know everything.
That we know everything. Because it really is absurd to think that we would.
Yeah.
And do.
But like as a kid, I remember like mom knows she's a grown up.
Yeah.
And no.
Now you realize I was just making it up.
Yeah. Like what
as
did
we
you
all
know?
are. Yeah.
But
that's really funny. Well, April, it's been really fun talking about this with you, and I hope it was interesting to our listeners, just in terms of, just a way to look at how we are all connected as parents and as children, and how those connections can be very difficult, and they can also be very joyful. And of course, not all of us have had wonderful relationships with our parents, but I think the ultimate goal is to continually learn and grow and evolve and recognize your parents as having done the best they can regardless, because our parents come into this world with their own limitations, their own wounds, and a lot of times they're only able to care for us at the level that they can care for themselves. And it's, that path to forgiveness of our parents can be a difficult one as adults, but it really is ultimately the greatest gift that you can give yourself, to forgive your parents and to begin to remember that ultimately they do love you.
Yeah.
They just may not have always known how to show it because they were working through their own stuff. But either way, it's a very powerful relationship, and it's one of the biggest ones that we work through in our lifetime. So anyway, I hope that everyone enjoyed that, and we look forward to seeing you on talking with you at another podcast. Thanks, April.
Yeah, thanks, Mom.